Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another episode from the Azure Happy Hour series. My name is Rashmita, and I'm the event planner for Microsoft Reactor India. I'm here today joined by our very own host, Reshmi, and of course, our special guest speakers, Sajitaran and Vamsi. But before we start today's session, I would request you all to read our code of conduct. We are all here together to learn, so please be respectful of other people's views, understanding of differences, being kind and considerate in the way you engage. The chat section is open throughout, and we do encourage you all to participate. Our speakers will answer all your questions during the session, so please feel free to drop all your questions in the chat section. With this, let me bring in Rishmi into the stream, and thank you all once again for joining and enjoy the session. Over to you, Rishmi.
Thank you so much, Rashmita, and good morning, good evening, and I don't know, good night, I guess, to one and all who is there in the call today. And thank you so much for joining us in this reactor session. I hope so far you have been enjoying how things have been going in Azure Happy Hour. So, one quick note before we dive deeper today. If you have topic suggestions, please feel free to drop it in the chat or let us know in the survey link, which will be shared soon, so that we can make sure that your favorite topics are being looked at as the next sessions, right? So, I keep speaking a lot. You already know me. I am Reshmi. I'm the PM at Static Web Apps previously. Now I've gone to a new team. So, yeah, excited, but still in Microsoft. So, today we have a very interesting topic. We have a power of data API builder helping the developer and improving the workspace and effectiveness, right? Like, I would probably not speak a lot because I know the speaker today already has a lot of context. So, without further ado, let me quickly call in Saji Dharan. So, hi Saji.
Reshmi,
Uh, yeah,
how's it going?
sorry. It's going great. I'm hoping that you also have a great time right now. Just before
Yeah,
you give your intro, let me quickly also introduce the next speaker we have, which is Vamsi. So, hi Vamsi, how are you
Hey,
doing?
fine. I'm doing great.
Awesome. So today's topic, right? Data API Builder. I know the two of you are going to kill it today. I know we already have a lot of people who are waiting and looking for solutions. But before we dive deeper there, Saji and Vamsi, why don't you take a couple of minutes and give your intros?
yeah, thanks, Reshmi. So, hi everyone. Very excited to join this session. So, I am Saji working in the Cosmos DB product team, mainly focusing on the developer experience with Cosmos DB and making Cosmos DB as a preferred database for developers. So, and in my free time, I do a lot of community stuff. So, if you're interested in talking about developer experience or anything related to cloud, please feel free to reach out to me. Thanks.
Amazing. Vamsi.
Yeah, hey Reshmi. Hey, thanks Reshmi. So I've been working in development engineer in the static web apps team, and currently I'm moved to another team, but uh, still in Azure. So excited and happy to be here with you.
Thank you so much for the intro, Amsi. And we already have had you in the past, so I'm sure the audience who is relating to the previous episode know how you are very good at your impromptu coding. But yes, thank you so much, Vamsi and Saji, again for joining us. So I'm gonna quickly put Vamsi off screen so that Saji can take the first part where he can walk us through the topics that he wants to say. So Saji, are we good to start the
Yes,
presentation? Do you
yes,
have
go ahead.
like
Sure.
Yes, awesome. Cool. Let me quickly bring up your screen then. Awesome. So, Sajid, before we dive deeper, right, like what exactly does data API builder mean? What exactly are we talking about over here?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think one of the recent work that we have been doing over the last, I would say, 1 year that we released in public preview in last month, right? Data API Builder allows the developers to create instantly and securely create REST and GraphQL endpoints. So if you're a developer who would like to build Jamstack or web apps in quick time and you want to talk to API which is using REST or GraphQL, you can just spin up those REST endpoint or GraphQL endpoint using Data API Builder. So goal of this tool set or the service to make the database accessible easily via REST and GraphQL, which means we are providing better developer capability and also velocity in building full stack and Jamstack solutions and make the developers to you know efficiently use this feature to build their apps. So
Wow.
if I have to, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it's a very loaded definition, so I'm just excited to see what all do we have for today's session.
Sure, sure. So, if you look at the outline that we are going to discuss today, we are going to talk about, I mentioned this word Jamstack, right? So, and we will talk about what is GraphQL because that is one of the hottest topic these days. And I will dive into Data API Builder, what is it all about, and we will talk about the tooling capabilities that we provide with Data API Builder. And I will demonstrate some of the capabilities that we provide through Data API Builder. And I will show a demo using both integrated option with Azure Static Web Apps, like how you can build and deploy your Jamstack or web apps using Azure Static Web Apps with the database connections available using Data API Builder. So that's the overall content that we will be covering today. Before that, I wanted to talk about what this Jamstack is all about. You might have heard this different stacks, right? If you're a JavaScript developers, you might use mean stack, MERN stack, and things like that. So Jamstack has been a buzzword in the JavaScript developers ecosystem for the last 3 to 4 years. There
Hmm.
have been so many JavaScript developers, and if you are a JavaScript developer, you might have seen like every year there is a new framework that comes in, and then you might tend to see a lot of cool applications built with these frameworks. So Jamstack has been a buzzword, and if you see the three, I would say the terms that we are defining here is one is JavaScript, and the other one is APIs and markups. If it boils down to three fundamentals principle with the web apps, I would say, which you typically deal with, building web applications. One is the JavaScript and APIs and markup. So it comprises of these three fundamental things. You can choose any technologies for each of these to build your application. Um, and if I have to talk about the workflow, just to demonstrate what we are trying to achieve through Data API Builder. So if you look at the traditional workflow, like when I was a developer back in, say, before 10 years, we used to have this typical architecture where you have front-end application that is a client, and then the middleware, and then the backend server, right? So we tend to
Hmm.
write REST and SOAP services to communicate between the front end and the backend. So you can take WordPress as example. Say when a user issue a request to WordPress site, what happens behind the scenes is that it makes a request to the server, and then what happens in the server is that a PHP file being executed, and it has set of SQL queries or whatever the database queries that it needs to get executed, and then it talks to the database and fetches the data that is needed. And what you see on the front end is a compiled HTML page, which consists of the data that is fetched from the backend. But when it comes to Jamstack, the content is being served through CDN, which is like the content delivery network, which consists of the compiled version of the static site, right? So you can talk about the three fundamental things that I mentioned about JavaScript and then the HTML. So all this content is compiled and then deployed, so that CDN has the flexibility to deliver to the end users. So and then the API part, the communication part is done through the microservices. So you don't have to, if you want to make some changes to your data so you don't have to completely, redeploy and things like that. So the advantage is that you are completely eliminating I would say the middle layer, and then you're directly talking to the backend from your front end application in order to fetch the data what you need. And obviously it comes with, certain advantages. One is the better performance because of the round trip cost that you make, and there is no middle layer that exists in between. And then it provides with higher security because you can use some of the security practices that exist in JavaScript development scenarios like chart token, and then you can integrate with any enterprise providers. And it also comes with cheaper and easier scaling, because when we talk about Jamstack application, the serverless term comes into play, right? So these these are scaled according to the way you need. If you're building any e-commerce apps, and if you want to deploy uh, to your customers, that is who is having a requirement of getting spike at different times, then this might be a better option. So that is one of the advantages that you get, and then better development experience. So if you look at most of these frameworks that I showed in the previous screen, all of these frameworks comes with better developer experience. So this is sort of the introduction between a Jamstack and a typical web development architecture that we had in the past. And if I talk about modern application or the Jamstack application, there are two things that comes into our mind, or how you interact with databases. One is the REST and the other one is GraphQL. I don't have to talk about REST.
Mm-hmm.
I hope most of you are aware of what REST is all about, and you might have used in your university and also when you're building applications in your uh, companies. I will mainly focus on the GraphQL side of things because that is the
Saji, before we go to the GraphQL one, right?
yep,
Like, let me take one quick second to just mention that
yep,
that was a very good explanation of what a Jamstack framework looks like and what exactly is this whole Jamstack architecture buzz. And while we are at that topic, let me just give a quick shout out to Static Web Apps, which is an Azure service, which helps
okay,
you in hosting Jamstack applications at free of cost, right? So the people who are attending the call right now, if you're not aware of static web apps, if you've not tried it out, I highly encourage you to go try it out and see how your latest and best Jamstack framework, which you're using in your project, can be quickly adapted into static web apps. And as a plus, towards the end of this episode, we will be showing an integration between both DAB and static web apps. So stay tuned for Saji and Vamsi to bring this into picture. So yeah,
sure.
back to you,
I'm a
Saji.
big fan of static web apps, so definitely I would recommend everyone to try it out. So yeah,
Glad to hear.
I, ta- I talked about two different API methods, I would say, the REST and GraphQL. REST has been existing for over a number of years. And then if you talk about GraphQL, it was introduced by Facebook back in 2012 for a specific purpose when they are building like, um, I know like all of you know about Facebook and how large the system is and how they scale things and things like that. So in order to deal with the existing customers as well as in order to adopt new customers who are using different devices, they had to come up with the GraphQL technology. And I will just demonstrate with a simple example so that you will get the concept right. So assume we are building a website for this happy hours and with list of speakers and their session. For example, if you have a URL, as a user, I'm hitting this URL to see the information about the speaker named Saji. What happens behind the scenes is that if this application is built using a REST endpoint, you might invoke a first request to get the speaker information with some controller or the parameter, right? Which calls the speaker information Saji, and then you will be sent with a response with whatever the information that is stored in the database. And if you need to retrieve the sessions that I have done in the past, then you have to issue another request for my session and then demos. So you're basically issuing three requests in order to build this. In a typical scenario, you can argue with me saying that I will build a custom endpoint, REST endpoint with all this information, but that's very hard in the rare scenarios because you might have to come up with different custom endpoints for each of these pages, right? So that's not the
Mm-hmm.
typical way to do that. So assume if we take that example, how the typical framework or the development lifecycle would look like. So initial request would get the speaker information, and then you will send a request to get the sessions that I have done, and then you will get a response with the JSON saying that these are the sessions. And then again, for each session, if you have to fetch the demos associated with that, then you have to send another request to get those demos. So it's a back and forth call, and it's a round trip calls that you're making to the server, which adds cost to the server as well as on the front end and as well as on the network because you are retrieving a lot of information back and forth. So uh, if we assume and if you have a requirement to serve, say, if you're building a mobile application which just displays only the speak information, again, you will have to deal with, you have to display only the certain part of the payload that you get from the server. So in order to cater these scenarios, what I would say is that's where the GraphQL come into play. Um, uh, so GraphQL, if you have to give an introduction, as I mentioned earlier, it was introduced by Facebook, and it's a query language and it allows the creation of a semantic layer of databases and data, which basically abstracts the underlying data structure. So uh, basically, you are taking over the control as a front-end developer. Say, if I need to show only name and my handle on the first page, then I'm going to instruct the server, GraphQL server, saying that, okay, I need only these two information. Give me that information. So basically, you're sending a GraphQL query to your API, GraphQL server, and then you are getting exactly what you need to show on the front end. Nothing more than that, or nothing less than that, right? So one of the problem that GraphQL resolve, I would say, it's overfetching of data. And then you have the N+1 problems that we typically deal with in a database world. And then GraphQL queries always return the predictable results. So you know that what you're going to get. And then you can, I mean, it always makes sure that this is what being presented on the screen, right? And if you want to make some changes, you are going to instruct again, okay, this is what I need. That's what GraphQL is all about. And if you want to, I know it's a wide topic, and if you want to learn more about this particular topic, GraphQL, you can always go to the official site, which has the spec doc and how things are working and how being implemented. You can always go and check it out. I talked about REST. I talked about GraphQL. Let's jump into the discussion about the advantages that GraphQL provides. Um, I think the specificity is one of the important thing. I talked about the information what you need is what you get. That is what we call about the first point. And then the performance, that is because you're avoiding the number of requests that you're making to the server, and also you're avoiding the network cost that would incur when you are retrieving a lot of information to the front end. And then flexibility is because you are giving the control to the front end developers on what you need. I mean, if you are a Jamstack developer, you might know about these difficulties, right? And how we deal with backend developers in order to make small change, and it needs to go through so many deployment and things like that. So you don't have to go through that hassle. It's automatically, I mean, you take care of that with GraphQL, and then most of the part is implemented on the client side. So yeah, I mean, you define what you want on the client application. So these are the fundamental advantages, and there are disadvantages as well. I would not say like GraphQL is the one thing that you need to go for. There are disadvantages in terms of, I would say, if you have to bring out caching. So you have to implement your own caching if you're not using a framework that doesn't come with caching. So that is one of the problem. And then it's more complex when you're dealing with relational databases, I would say. So those are some of the disadvantages. But if you have any questions on these topics that I discussed, please feel free to drop in the chat. I will take them as we progress. Yeah, and the same example that I showed, let's see how it's going to look in the GraphQL world, right? So as a front-end developer, I can issue this particular request to the backend saying that, okay, this is what I need. So it's like if you are coming from the relational world, you are writing a SQL query, select star from a table or something like that, or select name handle from a particular person, so speakers table. That's what we are defining it here. So we are defining this is what we need from the front end in order to bind it on the layout that we're having. And I just need this information with a single request rather than making separate request for each of these. I'm just defining, okay, I need sessions with the field like title, duration, and the link. I need also the demos associated with that, with the GitHub link, and also the what are the languages that I have covered. I'm getting all the information so that I can, build the
I think,
layout with the sync. Yeah.
Saji, we lost briefly.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, we lost you briefly, but yeah. We hear you now.
All right. Okay.
Saji, I did have one question though. Like I don't see a question with the audience right now, but I do have one question out of curiosity, right? When you have
Yeah.
a packed, like kind of pretty much like a packed JSON structure, as you're explaining, this is how the object should look like, so that we get the response exactly like this. What
Correct. Yeah.
happens if there is some property for which we do not have a value or we do not get a value? Like for suppose in this sessions field, right? Like imagine
Mhm.
I did not have a YouTube link. So how does the
That's right.
response come back to me?
So you will get it as null if the data is not present, but you can always define in the schema that you need. So I haven't covered that part yet. What the GraphQL schema is all about. But
Okay.
if you don't have that in the schema, then you won't get it in the response. So Even if you define a link here, and if you don't have it in the schema, then you would be getting an error saying that it's not part of the schema. But
So the error
if
will
that
be like for the overall response, or are we saying only for the link property we'll have an error?
only for the link property. I mean,
Okay,
uh, in this case, if you're issuing a request to get a title, duration, and link, if the link doesn't exist in the database, then you will get null for the link. And then if you don't define it in the schema, and if you are requesting for link, then you will get a response saying that you have to alter the schema.
got it. Makes sense.
Yeah. All right. I hope I answered that question.
Yeah. Perfectly.
Sure. Let's jump into the GraphQL core concepts. I think this is one of the fundamental thing that we need to know about. The first one is a schema, which I talked about right now.
Mm-hmm.
So the schema defines the structure of the data that you want to retrieve or that you want to define on your GraphQL endpoint. And then queries is something like you can relate to the REST world. It's like all the get operations, so the fetch operations that you do. And then
Correct.
mutations is something equivalent to put or post, like if you're doing update, upsert, or delete, all those operations are called mutations. And then subscriptions is something like what are the changes that you do on the data. If you want to get that reflected on the front end, say it's like a change feed, you can put it in the relational or the database world. What are the changes that you want to see on the front end whenever someone makes changes to the data that you
Mm-hmm.
stored in the database, that you can call it a subscription. In order to put this in simpler terms, I can take and to take example as analogy. Say if you're visiting Twitter, you have a structure defined, right? You can define it in 140 words or 280 words, something like that. So
Mm-hmm.
you are defined in the schema. So this is what you need to say, the structure of the tweet. And then queries is something like you're fetching the tweets that you see on your timeline. And then mutations is something like whenever you are tagging someone and posting a tweet about this particular sessions or something like that. And then subscription is something like when you click on follow button on someone, and then you're going to see whatever the updates they are doing it from their site. Right? So you are subscribing to that person, and then you are seeing those whatever the post that he is posting. So you can relate to the same example that I mentioned. I have to give an example for each of these. So schema is something like this. So this is the demo that I will be showing. So I am going to show a simple Jamstack application built with Angular, and then that talks to Cosmos DB as a backend. You can take any database because we are supporting all the database, all the operational databases on Azure. So you can take SQL, you can take Cosmos DB, NoSQL API, and then Postgres we support, MySQL we support. So you can take this example as a demo for all these databases and try it out. So this is the schema that I talked about, which defines the structure of the table or the collection that I am going to talk to. And then you can see what are the objects that I'm exposing, what are the fields that I'm exposing here in order to consume it on the GraphQL endpoint. And then you can see it has its own benefits. So you can come up with different types. You can define union types, or GraphQL support different types. So depending on the data structure, you can have them defined. So this is what I called as type. In this case, we just have a string and the ID, but you can define all the types that I mentioned here. So that's the first schema is all about. And then queries, as I mentioned, it's all about fetching the data from the backend store. So for example, I have an example. For example, you can see I'm retrieving all the wonders that are stored in the database, and you will get a response saying that, in the JSON format. And mutations is something that you can do, create, update, delete. So you can do all the operations with the mutations, like what are the changes that you want to see on the data, like insert, update, or delete. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we have come to the core part of this session, the data API builder. So if any questions so far from any audience, like, oh, you have, Rashmi?
Right now, we do not have questions from the audience.
Okay.
We definitely have people watching, so maybe like the questions can pour in eventually. But
Okay.
so far, at least from me as a listener, I'm following you and I'm
Okay.
very curious to see how it's going to pan out. So, yeah.
Thanks. Okay. So we spoke about what is Jamstack, what is GraphQL. I hope, all of you got the basic understanding about these two terms. This is the feature that we announced last month, which is Data IP Builder for Azure databases. So the goal of this particular feature is to enable the developers, as I mentioned earlier, to generate GraphQL and REST endpoint on the fly. And we are providing, a better tooling for developers to generate these endpoints in a quick time. And it is supporting all the operational databases which I have listed here. And we have announced it in public preview last month, as I mentioned earlier. Um, I mean, this is something that I already explained, so I will jump into the architecture directly. This is sort of the experience, I would say, what you see with Data IP Builder. So as a developer, what we are requesting from the developers, from the developers who are using Data IP Builder is that you need to provide a configuration file and a schema file that you see here. For relational databases, you don't have to provide the schema file, which is what I explained in the previous screen. The schema is the structure of the data that you want to see in your GraphQL endpoint. So you have to provide the configuration file. I will come to the configuration file in detail and what it's all about. So once you provide these two files, the runtime, the Data API Builder engine, it consumes these two files and then it fetches the information about the data. So which database you want to connect to, which entities you want to access to, what are the authorization and authentication policies that you want to enforce on the data, and then certain specific Data API Builder settings that you want to enforce on the config. So it reads the config file and then it generates the REST and GraphQL endpoint. Basically, the config file consists of these definitions. I will show a sample for that. Uh, you can consume Data
Um,
API. Yeah,
Saji, in the previous slide, right, I had just one quick question. Also, we do have a question from the audience. I am probably not sure what it means, but I'm guessing you would be able to. Anyway, yeah. So the first question I have is regarding the relational schema, right? Like I remember you mentioning that GraphQL is probably not like the best solution and market when you're looking at a relational SQL or something of that sorts, right? So, how does a relational schema work in this case? Like we are talking about
no,
some
I
other.
mean, uh, maybe I should have corrected in a way such that, relational in the sense the GraphQL works with relational databases, obviously, but the complexity comes when you have multiple relationship defines in your scenarios. Like you have to say when you have to write nested mutations to update a single row or something, and it reflects in multiple rows, right? So then you have to handle the consistency and also the conflict resolution automatically. I mean, you can achieve it through GraphQL, but you have to define those schema in a way that these are handled in a proper manner. So that's the complexity part that I explained. But certainly you can use GraphQL with relational databases. But when it comes to document store, you don't have to care about all this, right? I mean, you just insert the JSON and then you do some updates. So that becomes easier. But again, when it comes to relational schema here, what I mean is that, say, if you have a user table which consists of 5 fields, uh,
Mm-hmm.
so for relational databases, the Data API Builder has the capability to automatically infer the schema from the database because that is
Got it.
already defined. But in
Got
terms
it.
of NoSQL, what we are saying is that we have to get that information from the developers, because
Got
say
it.
you can have one document with 5 fields and then another document with 7 fields. You don't have to store any document, I mean, within 2 MB, right? So you can have one
Got
document
it.
with 5 fields, and then so we are giving the control to the developer, say that okay, these are the fields that I want to expose through the GraphQL endpoint. So if you have a data, say 1,000 records with say out of them 700 with 5 fields, then the developer
Mm-hmm.
would use those 5 fields in the GraphQL endpoint. So the schema would consist of those 5 fields only. So that's what
Makes sense.
we are recommending the users to provide. Yeah,
Got it.
I
Okay,
hope that
awesome.
clarifies. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, that clarifies. That clarifies. Maybe
yeah,
I misunderstood it, but yeah, this
sure.
makes it clear, and I'm hoping it helped for the audience as well. So one
Yeah.
of the questions we have from the audience is by Nanya Expert. So they're asking if this can be generated in quick time.
Yeah, definitely. I think that part I haven't covered yet. I think that's where the tooling comes into play. How we are going to use the Data API Builder CLI in order to generate with a single command. So that part I will show. And also with
Okay.
the Azure Static Web Apps integrated experience, we are providing the interface to do this on the fly, like with a single click. You can integrate the data API builder REST and GraphQL endpoint to your application. So I will cover that in the demo. Vamsi also have
Okay.
a demo from the Static Web website. Yeah.
Awesome.
So
Nanya expert is requested to not give spoilers for the talk. But yeah, all things aside, back to you, Saji. I
sure.
hope
So
you feel free to ask a follow-up question in the chat, by the way. We can definitely pick it up. So yeah,
sure.
over to you.
So I have come to the tooling part on the data API builder. Okay, I didn't cover this part. So currently we are supporting two ways to consume data API builder. If you are planning to use it in your own environment or even in any other cloud apart from Azure, you can still use it. For example, we are providing this package, the runtime, as a NuGet package and also as a Docker container image so that you can host it in, say, app service on Azure, or you can host it on AKS, or you can even host it on your laptop in order to play with it. So you just need to download the image. I will show the way to, so you can navigate to Data API Builder repo, and then this is the repo that I was talking about. If you want to contribute, you can always, you're always welcome to contribute to the features, and then we have discussions where you can give feedbacks to us if you want to see something enabled on the GraphQL and the rest world. You can do that, and then the one thing that I talked about is how you can consume it. So we have a getting started experience, which is provided here, and then you can go to the releases. You can download the NuGet package. You can download the container and then run it on your own environment. So that is one way to consume data API builder. And the second part is the integrated experience. Say if you don't want to manage the container on your own, we are providing that capability through Azure Static Web Apps integration. You just need to provide the config. You just need to provide the schema file in terms of NoSQL databases, and with a single click, you will be able to use that uh, GraphQL endpoint in your static web apps, which is built using any of the frameworks that we spoke about. So this integration makes it easier for you to get started with the experience. We will show a demo. On the first part, the tooling capability, there was one question that we got, how you can quickly build this endpoint, right? So we are providing the CLI. I hope all of you know about what this CLI is all about. So similar to what you have seen with static web apps, if you have used it, similar to Azure CLI, where you can create resources, we are also providing a CLI for data API builder in order to create the config file and start the runtime so that you can generate the GraphQL and the REST endpoints on the fly. So I will quickly jump into the demo, but before that, I will show the experience how it looks like. So as a developer, what you need to do is you need to download the DApp CLI, which is open sourced and also published. You need to write the commands. There are few commands that we have. One is init, add, update, delete. So you can make changes to your config file, and then you just need to use that start in order to get your GraphQL endpoint on your local environment, or even if you host it. Let me show a quick demo. Before that, I will talk about the configuration file, which I mentioned earlier. So you can see this is how the configuration file would look like. So here we are defining what the data source is. So in this case, we are going to use Cosmos DB NoSQL API as a backend. So you can see we are defining the data source as DApp Cosmos demo, and then connection string. We are recommending to use the environment variable if you are running it locally and even on static web apps. So you can use the function that static web apps provide, environment variable, and then it fetches the connection string from there. And then you can see some of the runtime settings which we provide. Like if you want to enable GraphQL only, you can define the path, and then you can set the enable to true or false. And if you want to disable REST, you can make it false. And then there are some host settings available. Say if you enable the development experience, we are providing an integrated IDE so that you can play with your GraphQL endpoints or REST endpoints on the browser itself. But if you set it to false, that is not enabled by default. You can use any of the existing IDs which are available in the open source world. And if you are using this dApp in an environment where you need to talk to a front end or the another application which is hosted in another environment, then you have to have the course settings enabled. That is another thing. And then authentication is provided in two ways, such that you can integrate with AAD that is provided out of the box. So you can create the
Mm-hmm.
users on AAD and then use those users to authenticate and use the authorization or the roles defined on AAD in order to provide, say, role level access on the database side. And then, yeah, that is, there are two ways that we provide. One is AD and the other one is the static web apps. Static web apps provide this easy auth token so that we are leveraging the same way to authenticate with our dApp, I mean, dApp engine. And then, you can define the entities that you want to talk to. So in this case, it's just wonders, and then the
Mm-hmm.
permissions that you want to have on the particular table or the collection. So here we are saying that the user have all the operations permissions, so you can perform read, delete, update, so all the operations you can do. So that is what indicated as star, and the role is anonymous. So that's the configuration file about. These are some of the sample commands that we provide. Let me show, I mean, this is something that you can always explore with a quick start. So you can do a dab in it. You can add entities using the add book. You can update entities, and then dab start is something that you can use to start. Let me show a quick demo on the local development experience, but we can take up questions if there are any.
Yeah, let me just quickly look at the chat. I think we don't have questions right now.
Sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
we are good.
So,
We can
all right.
continue. Yeah.
So as a developer, I have downloaded the dApp in local, and if you just do dab, you will be able to see the commands um like whatever we support, and then uh, yeah, you can do a dab init command in order to create the connectivity. I'm just going to copy paste. Okay, it says the config file. Okay, I need to, sorry, uh, maybe I need to navigate to the correct
Demo
folder.
gods. It's okay.
Yeah,
Everyone's been there.
yeah, I think. Uh, okay, let me navigate to this. I don't have. All right. So right now I don't have the config file, right? So what I can do is I can create a new config file with this command dab init, and then I'm passing the database type as Cosmos DB NoSQL, and then you can pass the schema file. I will come to that.
Mm-hmm.
And we have the Cosmos DB NoSQL database. That is
Mm-hmm.
the database that we are talking to. And this is the database name, the account name that I showed. I mean, probably I can show that in Azure portal. So I have created a Cosmos DB account which consists of a collection. So this is my account name, and then if you go to Data Explorer, which consists of the uh, database name dap Cosmos demo, and then if you go to wonders, you can see there are 40 items that I've created with list of wonders in the world. So this is the database
Correct.
that we are going to use,
Mm-hmm.
and right now I have created the config file with all the details, and right now I have provided the account endpoint with the local environment. Let me open the config file and show how it looks like. Cool. So this is a config file that we have automatically generated. I think there was a question about how we can generate immediately. So
Yeah.
this is what automatically provided through dApp CLI. And the next thing, you can add entity using dab add command. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to copy paste with what are the config that I showed. But you can
Yeah.
certainly do a dab add and then provide this connection. So right now we are ready with the connection details and the de detail that we want to expose through GraphQL. One thing that I have to do quickly is that I need to replace the connection string because I don't have the emulator running locally. So I just need to copy paste the connection string from the portal. So I'm doing this for a demo purpose. Since Cosmos DB support this auto generation of regenerating the keys, I can always regenerate. I will do it after the demo. But just to show the experience, right? So I have configured the endpoint, GraphQL endpoint with dApp, and then I'm going to do a dApp start in order to see the GraphQL endpoint? Yeah, I think it says, okay, maybe I didn't save this. All right, maybe I will clear this. Okay, it says an error. 1 second, probably that is something already used. Let me clear this. Okay, I have pasted the wrong connection string. Sorry, this always happens.
No worries.
Yeah, typical demo scenarios. All right, so yeah, you can see the endpoint automatically generated. So this is a GraphQL endpoint that I talked about, right? So with single command, I am able to run the uh, GraphQL endpoint. And then if you do a localhost GraphQL, you are provided with the IDE that you can see. And then, so this is the experience that we provide. If you want to see, okay, what are the uh, endpoints that are automatically generated? So this is what makes the DApp, cool, because these are the typical developer scenarios that we deal with, right? Say one of the example that I showed, like if you have to get speakers, then I have to write my own custom endpoint. So these are automatically generated by DApp. You can see, you can get do a single operation by doing, get wonder. And then if you want to do a get operations with all the data, then you can do a get all, like wonders. And then if you want to see what are the mutations that we support, we can see that different operations that we support. So create wonder, delete, and then update. So these are automatically generated through DApp. So you don't have to write the custom logic in order to talk to custom. I mean, if you are building this in a REST world, then you have to create a client, you have to write your select statement, select all, or whatever it is. So all those are automatically generated through DApp. So you don't have to worry about the backend logic that you need to write. So I mean, these are automatically generated, and just to show example, right? So in this case, if I have to get all wonders that are stored in database, so I will just do a quick check whether this is running fine. Yeah, you can see a green button, and if you do a get operation, you should see with all the data that is stored in the database. So
Correct.
that's the power of data API builder. Within a quick time, I am able to talk to database and then get the data API. I mean, generate in the GraphQL endpoint, and then right now I can use this in a, my front end directly. I don't have to depend on any backend developer to do this. And we are enabling more features. This is what I wanted to talk about. Like if you want to do pagination, I know that most of these Jamstack developers have this scenario of infinite scrolling. So we are supporting pagination through cursor. So you can always pass. In this case, I have only 40 items, but if you have, say, more than 100 items, you need to pass a continuation token that's in the form of cursor, and then you can retrieve that. And then, yeah, you can do all the operations with GraphQL. So that is another thing that I wanted to highlight. So with
Awesome.
Cosmos, you have to provide the schema and the config file, and you're good to go to talk to Cosmos DB. Yeah,
Got it.
that's the
Um,
first demo. Yeah,
yeah, we,
go
we
ahead.
do have a question. We have a question from the audience here right now. So I think this would be a good time to quickly pick it up. So
Yep.
Nazir Ahmed is asking if it will work with Java Spring Boot stack.
Definitely, I think one of the advantages that you get with data API Builder is that we support any client or any device, because what you're going to do at the end is that you're going to consume the endpoint that is generated through GraphQL. So with Spring Boot, you might have already dealt with REST endpoints, right? Say if you want to invoke a payment gateway, then you would do a REST end. Similar to that, you can obviously use the DApp endpoint with any framework or any device or any language. So that's possible.
Makes sense. Okay, thank you. And I hope that answered the question, Nazir. One question which I had from my end was regarding the automatically generated queries which you mentioned, right? Like in our
That's
case,
right.
it was get wonders. But if there are like multiple properties in the whole schema, we have automatic generation of queries for every property that we have, is it? Like right now, at
That's
least we
right.
had only wonders. Okay.
That's right. So right now everything is controlled through the schema that I provided. So you can see
Hmm.
like on the VS Code, right? Say if I remove type, then in the definition you won't be able to see the you know uh, the type. I mean,
Correct.
yeah.
Hmm.
So it's controlled through the schema. But if you want to, if you have multiple entities, then what you have to do is you have to alter the config with, say, in this case, I have wonders, but if you say locations or something like that, then you have to define another entity here that might talk to
Understood.
a
Okay.
different, yeah, yeah.
Okay. So the queries are happening at an entity level, right?
That's right. Yeah,
Like the automatic query generation, basically.
correct. Yeah. So it's
Okay.
in Cosmos DB world, it's at the collection level. In SQL world, you can relate to the database level.
Got it. Okay. Cool.
I mean the table
Awesome.
level. Yep. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
table. Got it. Yeah. Awesome. I think we can go ahead because I don't see any more questions. But
Sure.
folks who are watching the show, feel free to drop your questions in the chat and we'll make sure that we answer it as soon as we can. So thank you.
Yep.
Over to you.
All right. I explained about the basic functionality and the tooling that we provide. One of the other important thing is it's open sourced. So if you want to contribute, you can always go to the GitHub repo and contribute. And I want to give a shout out to this particular Chili Cream GraphQL platform, which is called as Hot Chocolate. So they built this initial library, and we are leveraging the same open source library to generate the GraphQL endpoints. So like most of these features are enabled through the hot chocolate, and we are working with the particular team to enable more features on Azure databases. So thanks to them again, once again. And I have to cover the authentication and authorization scenario because that is more important when you're dealing with enterprise applications, right? So we are enabling this through two modes. One is like if you want your API or the GraphQL endpoint to be public, I think that is one of the scenario. If you're building APIs that you need to be uh, aware about. One is, say, if you have users who have to consume public endpoints, we are providing that you can go ahead and use the public method. I mean, you just need to provide anonymous so that it can be accessed by anyone without authentication. And the second one is the protected. Say,
Mhm.
if you have an application which the user have to log in and access only the specific information. Say if you have an e-commerce application, and if the shop user log in, and if the user wants to see only his shop's detail, then we have to build that application in such a way that
Got
authentication is handled and the authorization is handled. So this is enabled through our own provider, like Azure AD. I mean, users, we are leveraging the AD to create the roles, users, and everything, and we are leveraging the, AD to provide the token to us, and we are validating from our end. And then based on the claims that we get, we are providing whatever the roles or the permissions that user has. And integration with the Azure Static Web Apps make it more simpler with easy auth token. Uh,
it.
and I think Azure Static Web Apps provide these two roles by default. One is maybe you can correct me, but anonymous and authenticated. So
Yeah.
you can use those roles to in your application to easily so that uh, you can use that. And then I have to talk about this config file, and just to give an understanding, there are things that I explained, right? One is entity and the permissions role, and then the policy. So we are enabling the item level authorization with Azure databases through something called policy. So one of the scenarios that I mentioned is that, say, as a shop user, if I want to access only my shop details, you have to query only your user details, right? So you can write these policies in the entity section. Say if you want
Mhm.
to retrieve only your data, you can write these specific policies you retrieve, and then you are good to go with authentication and authorization for your specific needs. That's one
Mhm.
important thing that I wanted to cover. And as a front-end
While
developer,
we are at
yeah,
that topic, Saji, in the previous screen itself, Nazir
yeah,
had a follow-up question, and I'm assuming this got answered in your current slide. But the question was for you to touch on attribute level and row level access controls. So
that's
we
what
did,
exactly I
yeah,
covered. Yeah,
yeah.
that's good.
So it just turned out to be very fair timing. But he does have another follow-up question.
Yeah.
So the question is Federation supported, or can I work with Apollo Federation?
Yeah, definitely. I think if you're asking on the client side, you can use the upload client in order to talk to the graphical endpoint generator. But right now on the GraphQL server, we don't support subscriptions and federations. But if the question is related to whether you can use the Apollo, client, yes, definitely you can use.
Okay, awesome. Cool. We can jump back. Yeah.
All right. As a front-end developer, this makes much easier for us to, define. Okay, say you can pass this as an optional thing on your request. Say if you pass the XMS API role as author or like admin, then from the data API builder, we are able to get what this user role is, and we should be able to provide you with the right access and things like that. But it's optional.
Correct.
And
Correct.
then we have come to the final part of this session. I would let Vamsi to show the static web apps CLI to make the experience better as a JavaScript developer or the front-end developer in order to show the integration with static web apps. I will also switch back to my slide just to show the end-to-end experience on Azure portal. So over to you, Vamsi, to show the static web apps integration on the local development experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that, Saji. And we have Vamsi on the screen now. So, Vamsi, over to you.
Yeah. Thanks, Rishmi. Thanks, Saji. So let me know if you can see the VSCode terminal that I have. And
We currently still are seeing Saji's screen. So, I was just wondering, like, do you want to walk through the architecture quickly, or shall we switch to Vamsi's screen?
Yeah. Vamsi, go ahead.
okay.
Okay. Vamsi, let me know when the screen is ready. I can bring it up.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, we can see your screen, Vamsi.
Okay. So before going into the demo, I just want to give a brief intro about SOS-CLI. So SOS-CLI is an NPM package, which is a command line tool which emulates Azure Static Web Apps experience locally. So SOS-CLI has multiple features which helps in your local development experience before publishing your app to the Azure. So using SOS-CLI, you can build your app, debug your app locally, and you can deploy your app to Azure also, and you can do much more. So with the DAP or data API builder integration in SOS-CLI, you can also query the database endpoints started by the data API builder. So as Saji mentioned previously, with the data API builder, you need a config file. So I already have the config file generated. But if you don't have the config file generated, you can generate it using the dab init that Saji showed if you have dab already installed. If you don't have dab installed, then you can generate this config file using swa CLI. So with the help of swa db init, you should be able to like generate the config file. Since I already have the config file, let me go ahead and start the local server. So with the help of swa start, by providing the -db flag and a quick walkthrough about the project. So I have a data API folder where I have the config file and the schema file for the GraphQL to work. And yeah, so SWA CLI started the data API builder at this port. It started the data API engine separately and this 5001 port, and it
Mm-hmm.
started the SWA CLI emulator at 4280. And see, this is the Angular app I have. So instead of like building the app and using it, I already had app up and running in a separate server, that is 4200. So I'm just binding that app to the SWA-CLI. So SWA-CLI will automatically bind your app to the backend database engine that is there. So this is the backend um, that that is up and running by the data API. So using
Mm-hmm.
this, you can query the database using the GraphQL queries as Saji has shown, and yeah, And this
So,
is the
Vamsi, just one quick question. So right now we saw what we saw was the backend, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
those
this is the
queries were the
backend.
queries which were like Saji mentioned, those are the queries which are like automatically generated, or these are the ones which you created for the specific case?
Yeah, I created this for the specific case, but you get all the like reference for that, like what is the structure of this query. You get the schema reference for that and definition
Got
provided
it.
automatically. But
Got
this
it.
is the specific query I created.
Got it. Okay.
And
Awesome. And because we are using SWA it also has a
mhm,
port called 4280, which is making sure that both front end and back end are running together, correct?
yeah, so uh, the front end is there at the 4200 port, which is the Angular app, and at the 4280 port, SWA binds that front end app and the backend together. So
Got it.
yeah, this is the 4880 port, and it shows all the information that is like um, there from the, it fetches the information from the database, and you can see the information here. So in the code,
Uh,
yeah,
yeah. One more quick question while we are at this topic, right? Like because
yeah,
4280 has both the front end and the back end together. So any changes
mhm,
that we make in the back end, like for
mhm,
suppose we alter some wonder in the database, will it
yeah,
immediately also reflect as a change in the 4280 page? Because it's
yeah,
completely fetching from the backend?
yeah, it will.
Okay, awesome.
So if you see my app, so I'm just fetching this endpoint. So slash database slash GraphQL. So SWA understands that it is calling the data API endpoint, and it automatically routes your request to the data API build.
Got
And
it.
this is the info you get.
Awesome.
Um, I think over to you, Saji. So Saji will show you how you can deploy this app to Azure and then like configure your connection string in the portal and
Thank
over
you
to you,
so
Saji.
much for that, Vamsi. And folks who are interested in seeing more about static web apps and the DAB integration, follow the link which is there on the screen right now, and it's also out in the chat. So you will be able to make use of Data API Builder and static web apps combination to the best. So thank you so much once again, Vamsi. Let me quickly check. There is a couple of questions in the chat. So can we pick those up right now while we have both of you, and then maybe we can go to the next session, Saji?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So the first question is from San Andrew. So he says, thanks, Saji, great feature. Data API Builder has its own caching.
Yeah, that's a good question. Right now, we don't have caching enabled on the data API builder. And yeah, I think it's one of the top priority from our side to enable this feature because for the front-end developers, it's one of the mandatory thing. So we will be working on that. And if you are interested in the feedback, there is a discussions enabled on the data API builder project. So you can go ahead and watch for the the feature roadmap that we already have on the discussions page. So caching is one of the top thing for us.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. And now we also have a question from Marcel asking if the demo example is available on GitHub. That's actually a very good question so that people who want to
Yeah,
try out the application, you should.
yeah, definitely. I think it's readily available on if you go to the same project page, and we do have a samples link. It consists of different framework samples. So we have Angular, React, and then yeah, Vue.js for different databases. This is a link. Maybe Rashmi, if you can post it there, that would be great as well. So this is
Yeah,
sample,
will
and
do.
then we do have different sample to-do app, library management app, and the Wonders app that I'm currently showing that Vamsi built. And then yeah, we do have different apps for different databases and also different frameworks.
Awesome. I will share the link whenever it comes through. So thank you so much for
Sure.
that. And thank you so much, Vamsi. Again, I will bring you back on screen once Saji is done.
Yep.
So, Saji, over to you again.
Yeah, sure. I think I will take probably less than 5 minutes to complete this, but just to explain on the integration with static web apps. So as you might know, static web apps is a great feature or the service which provides the developers to build Jamstack apps. So currently it supports two modes, I mean, with data API Builder including. So you can build your APIs using Azure Functions, and with data API Builder, we are adding a new feature called database connections, so that you can, build your front-end applications talking to database using REST or GraphQL endpoints. So that's the jinx of it. Like, if you want to understand, still you can use Azure Functions if you want, and database connections make it much better. Much better if you don't want to deal with writing the custom logic. So that's one of the highlight. And then most of you are aware about how static web apps work. So once you deploy, I think the demo that Vamsi showed is on the local development experience. But imagine once we push the report to GitHub, and there will be a build happening on the backend, and then that will get deployed to static web apps. That uses the database connections feature to talk to back database. So that's the end-to-end scenario that I wanted to cover. In addition to that, the integrated scenario, we are providing the hosting powered by us, so that you don't have to handle the scaling, you don't have to handle the management of clusters or the containers when you are running it locally. So those are some of the advantages that you get when you go through static web apps. So you can see how it's working from our backend architecture. With that, let me jump into the demo. So I already spoke about the database that I'm connecting with, and then I've already created a static web apps, which is called DAPSWA Cosmos DB Live. That's just the name. So with the integrated experience, you can see this feature enabled on Azure Static Web Apps, which is called database connection. So you will see a tab. So if you're building an environment to different environment, then you will see different environments created here. But in this case, I have a production environment. So you can just navigate to this. Before that, I just wanted to show the sample app that Vamshi demoed. So I have this sample app to my repo. I have pushed it in my GitHub repo, and then it will automatically build and deploy to static web apps. Whenever I make changes, it will get reflected. So you can see these two files which I talked about. One is the config file and the schema file, which are already committed. So let me go ahead and use this feature called database linking connection. So I just need to configure the backend. So in this case, it's Cosmos DB, and then I have to pick the subscription, and then I have to provide the resource group where my data source is, and then I have to provide the database name and the connection name. So in this case, it's it's the app Cosmos DB demo, and then we are supporting connection string as well as the managed identity with all databases. So if you're having an enterprise scenario, I would recommend to go with managed identity. Once you link, right now, you don't see any data because I haven't enabled the database connection option. But once you link, you can see the magic, right? The database linking is successful, and you can see the information here, which databases it's connected to, and then the database name and the configuration file, as well as the schema file. Let me go ahead and refresh the app, which you saw earlier in the demo, and it should show the data that is fetched from the backend. Yeah, you can see the data being
Awesome.
automatically generated. That's right. So, and if you want to inspect, how the requests are sent, you can go to Network tab and then check those GraphQL requests. Those are served by Data API Builder behind the scenes. So that's the end-to-end demo, and it makes developers' life easier. And it took just 5 minutes to build this demo. And you can always go ahead and check this sample app. So we just have a SRC folder, and you can issue the request in the with whatever the frameworks that you use in the format you want. So that's some of it. Yeah, that's all we had. And with
Saji,
that,
just one question, right? Like
yep,
while we are on that screen, if you could just quickly go back to the portal, I'm so sorry. So on the
yep.
portal screen, right, when we immediately added the database connection details and it immediately reflected, right? Is there also a possibility that we do any sorts of edit configuration or edit schema on the portal, or as of now, we are only looking at doing things from maybe like a command line or
That's a
an IDE?
good feedback to your team, Rishmi. So yeah. Right now, yeah, it's just linking and unlinking. So if you want to make some edits, I would say on the database, you have to unlink this and then you have to connect to the new database. And then if you want to make some edits to the config file, that is supported. So you can always go to your GitHub, edit it, and then that will get reflected here. So
And all these
that's
changes are immediate reflection, right? Like
right.
because
Yeah, yeah,
it's linked, right? And
yeah.
Bruce has a question. So Bruce Slade 06 asks, are the config files, which is JSON and GQL in the portal, taking over the files in the repo? I think Saji just answered that. So
That's right.
yes, since we are linking the repo and we are using the same files which are in the repo, so you can definitely use that as your option to edit it and I mean immediate
Exactly.
reflection.
Yep, yep, yep.
Yes. Also, Bruce says that they are very interested, so they are going to spend this week in this area. So we are glad that this is something which is going to keep you on toes, Bruce. Please do let us know all the feedbacks that you have, and
Yep.
we will always strive to make sure that all the products we work towards is going only better. So yeah, back to you, Saji. Sorry, just got a
Yeah,
little
sure.
distracted.
Yeah, that's all from my end, but I just want to show what are the things that we have shipped so far. So we are making the data API builder open source. So if you have any feedbacks or contributions or RFCs, or if you have anything on the docs or any feedbacks, or if you want to uh, do some community sessions or evangelize this, feel free to reach out to us. And then, yeah, the integrated scenario with static web apps, it's already available in preview. And yeah, these are some of the references that Rashmi has already shared. And yeah, these are some of the links that, and then if you have any feedback, write to us at dab@microsoft.com. Also, that's the alias. With that, I would like to thank everyone. I mean, thank Rashmi and all the team members for giving us the opportunity. And yeah, right now it's time for Q&A.
Awesome. I think we definitely had a very killer packed session. Like I didn't have to do a lot of questioning from my end itself, right? We could see that audience were very active and wanting to know more about it. And I think this feature has definitely come in the market at the right time where people are actually looking to have more and better ways of integrating with their databases. So thank you so much once again, both Saji and Vamsi, for taking out time and spending time with the community to help us in getting a better understanding for both data API builder as well as static web apps integration. And folks who are watching this, thank you so much for participating. We have the link for the survey chat over here. This survey is going to help us in prepare better sessions for you guys, especially on what product feedback you want to give and what are the topics that you would like to hear so that we make sure that we prioritize them. And all the other links which were discussed in the chat, which were brought on the screen, right? We have it in the chat, like all the links are present over there. Feel free to drop a mail to either the database team or the SWA team. Sajay, I'm going to request you once again to bring the email ID up
Yep, sure. Okay.
where they can like give the feedback. What was the email ID?
Yeah, I think I closed the, I was too
No worries.
excited.
I mean,
But
take it.
it's dab at Microsoft. It's dab at
Perfect. Yeah.
Microsoft.com. Yeah.
Yeah. So, folks, feel free to drop your feedbacks for dab@microsoft.com. And for static web apps, it is SWA team, I think. SWA team at the
Yeah.
rate Microsoft Talk. So yeah, for both the teams, feel free to get feedbacks in. Bruce has one final question, if we can just quickly do that. So Bruce says, I followed the MS Loan tutorials, it works fine. But then if I change the database or container names, it seems it stays in the old DB container. So is it because it's still in the preview? How does it like, is that like a
No, I
one-time
guess
glitch?
you have to change the config file as well if you want to change the, I think that's what container names. And also you have to link it again. So you have to unlink and link it again. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're doing a changes on the data source level, you have to link and unlink. If you are doing changes on the entity level, then it's automatically reflected.
Mhm.
Okay, awesome. I hope that answered Bruce. Okay, Bruce says they have already tried it without success. Okay,
Yeah,
maybe
feel free
Bruce,
to
you
reach out.
can,
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
you can definitely drop a note to any of us. We have all our social handles also available in the talk. So feel free to drop a note. We can get back to you, help you solve there. But for the folks who stayed throughout the call, and I hope you guys really enjoyed it, thank you so much for joining us today. Again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone who are looking at this call, and hope to see you in the next session very soon. So, thanks all.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye
Thanks,
bye.
everyone.